أصحاب المعالي والسعادة الحضور الكريم.
Excellencies, distinguished audience, peace be upon you. I wish first to express my pleasure at participating in this important global congress, which addresses one of the most important groups that must receive sustained support and care at all levels, namely victims of terrorism. I would also like to convey my thanks and appreciation to the United Nations Office of Counterterrorism for its able efforts in organizing this Congress. Distinguished audience, over the past few years, the international community has made real progress in supporting the rights and needs of victims of terrorism by adopting a number of major United Nations resolutions. As a legislator, I emphasize the pivotal role that parliamentarians can play in translating these international resolutions into national legislation and providing the binding legal framework for guaranteeing and protecting the rights of victims of terrorism. As a matter of fact, this subject receives a serious focus of attention in the agenda of the Arab Parliament, with a view to reducing the gap between international commitments towards victims of terrorism and the practical implementation of these commitments at the national level. In this connection, the Arab Parliament has been firmly engaged in the diligent work of the United Nations Office of Counterterrorism, the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, and the Interparliamentary Union to launch a set of model legislative provisions for victims of terrorism to support and protect these rights and needs, where the Arab Parliament participated in the 6 conferences that resulted in this considerable effort, which was launched in February 2022. And in order to mobilize efforts to implement these universal model provisions on the ground, the Arab Center for Counterterrorism and Extremist Ideology, newly established by the Arab Parliament as an Arab mechanism to support Arab states' counter-terrorism efforts, is in the process of drafting a unified Arab law to support victims of terrorism, guided by these model legislative provisions, with the aim of assisting Arab states in reviewing and updating the relevant national legislation to comply with international commitments adopted by the United Nations in this regard. Further, this unified law will serve as an important reference for Arab states that have no national legislations in this field. Distinguished audience, the victims of terrorism are most in need of hearing their voices, supporting their needs, and protecting their rights, and our role in assisting them must not only stop at the limits of solidarity with them, but there must be practical and tangible measures to support their needs continuously. We also need to raise global awareness of their rights and of the amount of suffering caused by terrorism to them and their relatives. And I believe that our Congress today is a right step in the right direction, which must be built upon. Thank you for listening. Peace be upon you all.